The narrow streets of Naples were slipping into an unusual stillness at midnight. The city's daytime commotion had mostly faded. The distant whine of Vespa engines and the whisper of the Tyrrhenian Sea in the harbor far below were the only hints that Naples still pulsed with life. In a small café nestled on a cobblestone alley near the old Spanish Quarter, Elena Bianca was stacking the last of the wooden chairs upside down on the tables. All evening, the aroma of espresso had permeated her clothes and skin. Now it mingled with the faint, salty breeze that drifted in through the propped-open door. Elena pushed a stray strand of dark hair behind her ear, her fingers a little shaky from the long day's work. The sign out front, Café Bianca, named after her late father, was already switched off, and the warm glow from the inside lights spilled onto the shiny cobblestones just beyond the entrance. It was past closing time, but she lingered, as she always did, meticulously wiping down the mahogany counter. Each cup and saucer was dried and placed back on the shelf with care. This café was more than just her livelihood. It was her family's legacy. Since her papa's death 5 years ago, Elena had poured her heart into keeping his dream alive. The neighborhood regulars said her coffee had soul, that it could cure even the worst days. She always smiled and waved off the compliment, but in truth, she poured all her quiet passion into every single cup. It was, in a way, all she had left of him. Outside, a light rain began to fall, tapping softly against the awning. Elena stepped to the doorway and sighed at the sight of the drizzle, wondering if she should wait it out a few minutes before walking home. Naples' weather was notoriously fickle in autumn. Clear, starry nights often gave way to sudden, unexpected showers. She inhaled deeply. The earthy scent of wet pavement, mixed with the lingering aroma of coffee, was comforting and familiar. The machines are already cleaned. His eyes locked onto hers, and the words died in her throat. He didn't glare. It wasn't necessary. His stare alone commanded obedience. 1 cup, he said, raising a single finger. It was not exactly a request. Elena realized her pulse had quickened. She glanced at the door. His guard still stood there, arms crossed, making it clear there would be no easy exit. If she refused again, would they leave peacefully? Looking back at the man before her, Elena had a feeling that no wasn't a word he heard often. Swallowing, she gave a tight nod. "Please take a seat. I'll make you the best espresso in Naples," she said, injecting a gentle confidence into her voice that she didn't quite feel. He finally sat, choosing the stool at the counter directly across from her. The overhead lamp cast a golden glow on the rich walnut of the bar and illuminated the man's eyes. She dared a fuller look at him as she turned to the espresso machine. His gaze had drifted to the photographs on the wall, old black and white pictures of Naples, and one of Elena's father grinning as he held up a giant coffee bean sack on opening day years ago. The man's expression was unreadable, but at least he wasn't watching her every move now. Elena busied herself with the familiar motions, heating the machine, grinding fresh beans with soft, or tapping the grounds into the portafilter. Her nerves steadied as she focused on her craft. If coffee was going to be her last act of the night, she vowed it would be a damn good one. She tamped the grounds with firm, even pressure, then locked the portafilter in place. The machine hissed, and soon a thin stream of espresso trickled out, filling the silence with the comforting sound of brewing. Rich, dark liquid poured into the tiny ceramic cup, topped with perfect crema, the color of hazelnuts. The aroma wafting up was robust and nutty with a hint of sweetness. On a whim, Elena reached for a small tin she kept on a side shelf, as if she were the one who had caught him by surprise. Finally, he straightened a little. There was a new glint in his eye, a decision made. "I will ask you only once, Elena," he said. "Did you truly make this coffee yourself?" She nodded, confusion knitting her brow. "Yes, of course. There's no one else here." He studied her another second, then nodded as if confirming something to himself. A faint smile ghosted across his lips, but it wasn't entirely a pleasant one. It held a predatory satisfaction. "Bennett." Before Elena could react, he reached into his jacket again. This time, her hand tightened on the heavy metal tamper beneath the counter, but the object he drew out was a money clip thick with large euro notes. He peeled off several 100-euro bills and placed them on the counter next to the espresso cup. Her eyes widened. "Signore, that's far too much." He lifted a hand to silence her protest. "Consider it payment for the coffee and for your time tonight." He glanced toward the guard by the door and gave a slight nod. The bodyguard locked the door with a decisive click and drew down the shades over the glass. Elena's throat went dry. She looked from the drawn shades to the man before her. Her instincts screamed that whatever was happening now was far beyond an ordinary late-night coffee. "My time, sir." He pocketed the money clip and then fixed her with that dark, commanding stare. "You are closing the cafe. In fact, you won't be open again until morning." She nodded dumbly. "Good. You are coming with me." The words were calm, almost gentle, but they hit her like a physical blow. Elena took a step back, her hip bumping into the counter behind her. "What? I can't just leave with you. Who even are you?" His jaw tightened slightly, as if he wasn't used to being questioned. He hesitated a moment, then gave a small incline of his head. "My name is Dante Moretti," he said it quietly, yet there was weight behind those words, as if she should recognize them. Elena's eyes widened further. The name did ring the faintest bell whispers she'd heard from some customers who spoke in low tones about local figures, or in news headlines half remembered. The Moretti family. Something to do with business, shipping maybe. But there were darker rumors too, ones that trailed off whenever she approached. She felt a chill of recognition and denial. This couldn't be happening. Perhaps this was some misunderstanding. "Signor Moretti," she began, trying to steady her voice. "I appreciate your patronage, but I can't possibly go anywhere with you tonight. It's very late, and I have to get home." He moved with startling swiftness. One moment he was standing calmly, the next he had rounded the counter and was right in front of her. Elena pressed back against the counter's edge as Dante Moretti loomed over her. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she felt the gentle warmth radiating from his body, saw the rainwater still beating on the broad shoulders of his suit. She had to tilt her head up to meet his gaze, and found herself trapped in the intensity of those dark eyes. "Elena," he said, and her name in his mouth was a quiet storm. "I never take no for an answer." He lifted a hand, and Elena flinched, but he merely brushed his thumb across his bottom lip thoughtfully, as if considering something. The slight movement drew her attention to his mouth, and she felt her cheeks heat at the inappropriate thought that his lips were surprisingly full, almost soft, in contrast to the hardness of his voice. He continued, each word deliberate. "You asked who I am. I am a man who gets what he wants, and right now I want you." Elena's heart thundered so loudly she was sure he could hear it. This had spiraled far beyond a strange coffee encounter. Every instinct told her this man, this mafia boss, she realized with dawning horror, was used to controlling people like pieces on a chessboard. His bodyguard opened the back exit, and the night air rushed in, cool and laced with the scent of wet stone. Dante began to guide her out. Elena's eyes darted around the empty alley behind the cafe, searching for any savior in the shadows. But there was only the sleek black sedan now idling there. Heart pounding, Elena realized there would be no rescue, no knight in shining armor appearing in the rain. Only this dark stranger claiming her with the soft threat of protection. Gathering the last shreds of her courage, Elena turned to Dante, meeting his gaze directly, even as he led her to the open car door. "You may force me to go with you," she said, her voice unsteady but determined. "But you can't control me. I'm not afraid of you." A lie. She was terrified, but in that moment she refused to cower. If she was stepping into the lion's den, she would not do it on her knees. Dante's eyes widened ever so slightly, as if surprised by her boldness. Then a true smile curled his lips, brief, wolfish, and approving. "Brave," he murmured. "You should be afraid, Elena. You have no idea what world you've just stepped into." With that, and with a final gentle press of his hand, he helped her into the car. As the door shut and Dante Moretti slid in beside her, Elena clutched the lapels of his jacket around herself, her heart throbbing with dread and a curious, unwelcome anticipation. The car pulled away into the night, leaving the quiet cafe and the spilled light on wet cobblestones far behind. And as the city streets blurred past, Elena could only wonder what exactly she had awakened in this man with one simple cup of coffee, and what price she would pay for it. The drive through the night was surreal. Elena sat rigid in the leather seat of the sedan, Dante's jacket still draped around her like a protective cloak. The car's interior smelled of rich leather and a faint trace of his cologne. Dante sat beside her, silent and pensive, the occasional passing street lamp casting fleeting light across his sharp profile. The bodyguard drove, eyes on the road, saying nothing. Elena's mind churned. She had replayed Dante's words in her head a dozen times already. "You are mine now." The sheer audacity, the arrogance, and yet he had also said, "I protect what is mine." What did that mean for her? Was she a captive, a pawn in some game she didn't understand? Or was she under his twisted version of protection because of some coffee-induced whim? The car wound through Naples' curving streets, climbing gradually into the hills overlooking the bay. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening when Elena caught a glimpse of Castel Sant Elmo illuminated against the dark sky. She realized they were heading toward the wealthy district of Vomero, or perhaps further toward Posillipo. Indeed, after a few more turns, the sedan passed through tall wrought iron gates that opened. They knew or simply didn't think it was their place to say. This felt like a rare glimpse behind the carefully constructed facade. "What happened to his father?" she asked gently. Valentina hesitated, glancing toward the door as if afraid of being overheard. "It was an accident," officially, the housekeeper said quietly. "A car crash on the coast road." But everyone knew, everyone suspected it was not an accident. Dante's father had many enemies. He stepped into shoes too big for him too soon. It was a violent world, Elena knew. The world outside this villa, a world Valentina said Dante was trying to protect her from. And so here she was, a prisoner under the guise of protection, caught between a past tragedy and an uncertain future. Perhaps a woman who was now in the orbit of a powerful man. At their approach, the car rolled down a long, dramatic driveway flanked by towering cypress trees. Ahead, a magnificent villa materialized from the inky blackness of the night. Soft, inviting lights spilled from the windows, illuminating a two-story facade crafted from warm terracotta and natural stone. Perfectly manicured gardens bordered the entrance, and in the courtyard, Elena could make out the ghostly silhouettes of statues and a gently bubbling fountain. It was the kind of home Elena had only ever seen gracing the pages of glossy magazines or glimpsed during rare walks through the most exclusive neighborhoods. A symbol of unimaginable luxury and old money. A world away from her cozy, well-worn little cafe. The car glided to a stop almost immediately under a grand portico. Two men in impeccably tailored dark suits materialized, their movements precise and efficient. One of them opened Elena's door, startling her slightly with the suddenness of his appearance. Dante was already out of the car on his side, issuing quiet, almost imperceptible orders to another man who had appeared seemingly from nowhere. This man was lean, with distinguished graying hair, and Elena pegged him as the steward or perhaps the butler of the house. She overheard Dante's low, commanding voice cutting through the night air. "Tell Marco to put 2 men on the cafe tonight. No one goes in or out, understood? And in the morning, have someone notify her customers that the shop will be closed until further notice. Handle it discreetly." Elena's stomach clenched into a tight knot. He truly had thought of absolutely everything, meticulously moving pieces on a chessboard to ensure her world outside these walls was completely paused, suspended in time. As Elena hesitantly emerged from the car, instinctively clutching Dante's jacket tightly around her, he was instantly at her side. One of his large hands settled reassuringly, yet possessively, at her elbow, guiding her forward. She fought the reflexive urge to pull away from his touch. There were simply too many strangers surrounding them, all of them eyeing her with a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled suspicion. No, not punishment, salvation. The word hung strangely in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Elena shook her head in disbelief, utterly bewildered. I don't need saving. At that, Dante's expression grew deeply haunted, his eyes reflecting a pain that seemed to go bone deep. He lifted a hand as if he were about to reach out and gently touch her cheek, to brush away the tear of frustration that had escaped and was now tracing a path down to her jawline. But he couldn't bring himself to complete the gesture, his hand hovering in the air for a moment before dropping back to his side. Everyone needs saving from something, he murmured, his voice almost too low to hear, as if he were speaking more to himself than to her. Then, he turned sharply away as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the hall. A woman in her 50s, dressed in a crisp, impeccably pressed blouse and skirt, appeared carrying a neatly folded stack of clothes. She offered Elena a polite, almost shy smile. Buonasera, Signorina Star. I'm Valentina, the housekeeper. I've brought you some dry clothes for the night. Her tone was warm and comforting, laced with a gentle local accent. It was perhaps the first truly friendly voice Elena had heard all night. Elena managed a faint, almost inaudible *grazie*, as she accepted the clothes. They consisted of a soft, obviously high-quality cotton sweater, and a pair of comfortable drawstring lounge pants, clearly brand new or impeccably well-maintained. Dante nodded curtly to Valentina. Thank you. We'll manage from here. He then beckoned Elena to follow him, his eyes brooking no argument. Clutching the spare clothes tightly in her arms, Elena trailed after him up a wide, sweeping staircase with ornate wrought iron railings. Her legs felt heavy and unsteady, weighed down by a mixture of exhaustion and lingering fear. The adrenaline rush from earlier in the evening was slowly but surely giving way to a bone-deep weariness. At the top of the stairs, they walked down a long hallway lit by soft, muted wall sconces. He stopped abruptly before a door at the far end of the hallway and pushed it open, revealing a spacious and exquisitely decorated bedroom suite. The decor was elegant and understated. Cream-colored walls with subtle gold accents, a king-sized bed with a lavishly ornate headboard, and heavy, floor-to-ceiling drapes that probably concealed a balcony and a breathtaking panoramic view of the city below. The green room, as he had called it, had subtle touches of sage and emerald green in the upholstery and accessories, and a vase overflowing with fresh, fragrant white lilies sat on a writing desk in the corner. Elena stepped wearily into the room. It was far more luxurious than any hotel she could ever dream of staying in, and certainly worlds away from her modest, humble apartment located above the cafe. The carpet was so thick and plush that her feet sank slightly into it as she walked. She felt as though she were stepping into a movie, a surreal dream, and not into her actual life. Dante hovered in the doorway, his hand still resting on the door handle. You'll sleep here. My room is next door. He inclined his head slightly toward the adjacent wall. If you need anything at all, Johnny or Valentina can also be summoned if you press that button. He indicated a small, discreet panel located by the bedside table. Elena wordlessly set the clothes down on the bed, her fingers brushing against the incredibly soft, luxurious duvet. She turned to face him, crossing her arms defensively to try and hide the tremor that was now running through her entire body. And what if I need to leave? To go home? His face hardened almost imperceptibly. You already asked that question, and I already gave you an answer. You're not leaving, Elena. She took a shaky, ragged breath, struggling to maintain her composure. This is kidnapping. Even at this late hour, the lights of ships bobbed gently in the distance, and the imposing outline of Mount Vesuvius loomed in the background under a cloud-hazed moon. I grew up in this city, Dante said quietly, his voice tinged with a hint of melancholy as he continued to gaze out at the cityscape. I know what it can do to those who are unprepared for its cruelties. I've seen good people broken, Elena, simply because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or simply because someone with power decided to take what they wanted. He finally glanced back at her, his silhouette appearing sharp and defined against the backdrop of the night sky. I have the power here, and I decided I wanted you safe with me. Consider it a stroke of fate, if you like. The same fate that led me to your cafe tonight. Elena instinctively hugged herself, feeling both deeply unnerved and strangely moved by his impassioned speech. It almost sounded as if he was trying to justify his actions as much to himself as he was to her. "Get some rest," Dante said, letting the curtain fall back into place with a soft whoosh. He moved back toward the door, pausing beside her as she stood frozen near the foot of the bed, still clutching the clothes Valentina had brought. For a fleeting moment, he looked as though he might reach out and touch her shoulder, or gently brush away that stray lock of hair that had fallen across her forehead. His hand lifted slightly, as if drawn by an invisible force, but then he abruptly clenched it into a fist and let it drop back to his side. "We'll talk more in the morning. I'll have breakfast sent up for you." She nodded mutely, unable to find her voice. He stepped out into the hallway, pausing just before he closed the door. "Oh, and Elena," he added, his voice low and serious. She looked up, her heart pounding in her chest. His gaze bored into hers, conveying an unspoken apology and an implicit command all at once. "Do not attempt to leave this room, Elena." She rose from the bed and moved toward the table, noticing a vase of fresh wildflowers placed beside the tray that hadn't been there the night before. Blue lavender sprigs were artfully arranged among the other flowers, giving off a faint, sweet scent. It made her think of the pinch of lavender she had added to Dante's coffee the night before, and she wondered if this was a simple coincidence, or if someone had intentionally placed them there. "Valentina," she asked softly as she sat down at the table, "how long have you worked for Senor Moretti?" The housekeeper tilted her head slightly, perhaps surprised by the personal nature of the question. "Oh, me? Nearly 20 years now. I served his father before him, and young Dante, well, he's not so young anymore, of course, but I still remember him as a little boy running through these very halls." Elena tried to picture that stern, formidable man as a playful child. It was difficult to imagine, but if anyone could offer some insight, it would be someone who had watched him grow up from boyhood. "He must have been different then," she ventured, unable to suppress her curiosity. Valentina gave a cautious, almost wistful smile. "He was a very lively boy, full of laughter and mischief. His mother had a way of making the villa feel like a real home, even though his father's business always cast such long shadows. After she passed away, things changed drastically. So his mother was gone." Elena felt a sudden pang of empathy for Dante. "That's terrible," she murmured. "He must have loved her very much." "Oh, Signorina, she was his light, his everything." Valentina's eyes turned distant and wistful, as if she were reliving a cherished memory from long ago. "Dante was only in his late teens when she fell ill. Cancer took her quickly and unexpectedly. I don't think he ever fully recovered from that devastating loss. He changed overnight, becoming more serious, more driven. And when that other tragedy happened, Dante had to grow up even faster, almost overnight." Elena sipped her cappuccino slowly, hanging on Valentina's every word. No one had explained anything about Dante's past to her. Perhaps they had simply assumed that she already knew, or didn't think it was their place to say. This felt like a rare glimpse behind the carefully constructed facade of the man who now held her life in his hands. "What happened to his father?" she asked gently, her voice barely above a whisper. Valentina hesitated, glancing nervously toward the door as if she were afraid of being overheard. "It was an accident, officially," the housekeeper said quietly, lowering her voice almost to a murmur. "A car crash on the coast road. But everyone strongly suspected that it wasn't really an accident. Dante's father had made many enemies over the years. He stepped into shoes that were perhaps too big for him and far too soon. It's a very violent world, Elena, as I'm sure you know. The world outside this villa, the very world that Valentina said Dante was now trying to protect her from. And so here she was, a prisoner under the guise of protection, caught between a past tragedy and a highly uncertain future. Perhaps even becoming a woman who was now unwittingly in the orbit of a powerful and deeply dangerous man. Valentina didn't dare speak of it directly, but she seemed to trust Ellena's gentle coaxing. "What happened to his father?" she inquired carefully. The housekeeper's face tightened, as if summoning a painful memory. Don Alberto, Senior Moretti's father, was killed in an ambush about 6 years ago. It was very violent, very sudden. Dante was just 25. He barely escaped the same fate himself. Overnight, he found himself head of the family business. Though she phrased it delicately, Elena understood the implications perfectly. Head of the family business. At 25 after an ambush. This was Mafia talk. Her cappuccino suddenly tasted bitter. So, Dante became a Mafia boss by inheritance and blood, forged in violence. Valentina noticed her troubled silence. The older woman covered Elena's hand with her own briefly, a comforting gesture. He has had to be hard, Kara. But I want you to know he is not a cruel man. Not to those who show loyalty and kindness. He's done some good for the people here, though you won't hear it openly. Many of the locals have food on their tables because of him. But yes, he carries great burdens. Elena swallowed the lump in her throat. She wasn't sure why it mattered to her that Dante might have a softer side. He was still effectively holding her captive. Yet, hearing about his mother and father ignited her compassion. She knew the pain of losing family, too, albeit under different circumstances. Still, could any of that justify what he was doing now? I don't really know why I'm here, Valentina, Elena admitted softly. He says it's for my protection, but from what? Is someone actually trying to harm me, or is it just that he wants me under his thumb? Valentina's eyes darted to the door as if checking for eavesdroppers. Satisfied they were alone, she answered. All I'll say is that this house has been quieter since you arrived. In all these years, I haven't seen Senior Dante react to anyone the way he has with you. Whatever reason he's given you, I think he's still figuring it out himself, dear. She patted Elena's hand again. Just be patient with him, and stay safe. These are dangerous times. Before Elena could press for more, Valentina excused herself to let her eat in peace, reminding her to ring if needed. Elena nibbled a flaky cornetto, her mind swirling. Dangerous times, Valentina had said. Perhaps Dante truly did fear for her safety, though likely it was his fault she was in danger at all, drawing her into his world. Still, she felt a flicker of gratitude toward Valentina for speaking plainly. Her father's death had felt random. A wrong place, wrong time situation. But in her new circumstances, paranoia crept in that perhaps everything in her life might connect in ways she never realized. Well, thank you for being honest, Luca, she said quietly, standing up again. The guard inclined his head. As she continued along the path, she found herself near the back wall of the estate. Just beyond, she glimpsed the rooftops of the city cascading downhill. It struck her how close and yet unreachable her old life was. Just beyond this wall were the streets of Naples. She knew people who might be looking for her now. She thought of her cafe, shuttered this morning. What would her regulars think seeing it closed? Perhaps Johnny had left a note, as Dante ordered. But for how long could she really be kept away indefinitely? Elena's chest tightened. She missed the familiar routine, the sense of purpose each day gave her. Here, she felt like a caged bird, fed and watched, but with no freedom to sing her own song. Impulsively, she turned to Luca. I'd like to walk along the wall if I may, get a view of the city. Luca looked at the high stone wall that marked the property's boundary. It was about 8 feet tall, topped with decorative iron spikes and probably security sensors. Of course, please stay on this side, though. What did he think? That she'd start climbing? She forced a bland smile. Don't worry. They walked parallel to the wall until they reached a corner where a large oak tree's branches partially arched over from outside. Here, through the foliage, Elena could see a slice of Naples beyond. A patchwork of faded pastel buildings, laundry lines, and the dome of a distant church. Normal life carrying on without her. Emotion swelled. In a sudden rush of defiance, Elena's feet moved of their own accord. She broke into a sprint, following the wall toward where she remembered the front gates might be. It was foolish. She knew it even as her legs pumped. He nodded curtly to Luca, who finally released her and stepped back. I'm sorry, boss, Luca began, sounding nervous. She ran. I didn't expect. Dante silenced him with a raised hand. still breathing hard from his own dash. "We will discuss this later. Go back to your post." Luca lowered his eyes and retreated a few paces, though Elena knew he'd still be watching. Now it was just Dante and Elena facing each other under the midday sun. A few other guards hovered at a distance, awaiting their boss's cue. Dante's suit was immaculate as always, a deep navy today, but his hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been raking a hand through it. The intensity of his glare pinned her in place. Elena was the first to speak, defiantly raising her chin, even as her voice trembled. "Are you going to drag me back inside like a prisoner, then?" A muscle in his cheek twitched. "If I have to," he said, low and dangerous. She could feel her pulse throbbing in her throat. "This is insane, Dante. You can't expect me to just stay here, caged, without even trying to get my freedom. You took me from my life." His eyes flashed. "I told you it was for your own good." "Maybe I don't want your version of good," she shot back, anger overcoming caution. "Maybe I'd rather take my chances out there than be a pawn in whatever game you're playing." Dante stepped forward. Elena instinctively stepped back, but her heels hit the low edge of the driveway's curb, and she stumbled. His hand darted out to steady her, gripping her elbow firmly. She tried to yank away, but he held on, not hurting, just preventing her escape. "You think this is a game?" Dante's voice was quiet, lethal. "You have no idea what forces are at work, Elena. Last night, one of my warehouses was attacked on the docks by the Rowdy clan. 2 of my men died." His eyes bored into hers, raw with anger and something else. Fear. "That attack was meant for me. If I hadn't been elsewhere." He cut himself off, jaw clenched. "It's all I have of my family. I don't want it tainted with blood money." His eyes hardened at the phrase, but he inclined his head. "As you wish. It will remain closed and untouched under guard, so no one else tampers with it until you can return." "And when will that be?" she challenged. A muscle in his jaw shifted. He didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Elena looked away, out through the bars of the gate to freedom beyond. Felt hopeless. She was one small person caught between forces so much larger. Perhaps Dante truly believed he was protecting her, but his presence was the very thing that endangered her now. It was a cruel paradox. A warm touch on her chin made her flinch slightly, Dante gently turning her face back to him. His hand was gentle, his thumb brushing her cheek in an unconscious, soothing motion. The gesture froze them both. Elena's breath snagged at the intimate contact. Dante's eyes searched hers. "I know you hate this," he said quietly. "I know you may hate me, but please trust that I am doing what I must to keep you alive." The plea in his tone disarmed her. She realized this was perhaps as close to begging as a man like Dante Moretti would ever come. It stirred an unwanted compassion in her chest. She swallowed hard. "And what about living, Dante? Being alive isn't living if I have no say in my life." He slowly released her, looking oddly forlorn. "I will try to give you more freedom here, within limits, but I cannot let you go. Not yet." Before she could respond, he took her hand. "Come, let's go inside. The gardens have lost their appeal for now." His grip was firm but not forceful as he led her back toward the villa. Elena walked in silence at his side, her emotions a jumble of lingering anger, reluctant understanding, and a strange warmth where his fingers wrapped around hers. As they passed through the foyer, Dante addressed the guards coolly. "That coffee, what did it mean to you? Why did it affect you so much?" Dante's shoulders tensed subtly. He glanced away out to the lemon trees. "My mother," he said at length. "She used to make coffee just like that, with a pinch of cinnamon and cocoa. She had her own little twist. She'd stir it with a sprig of lavender from her garden. She said it was to remind us that even bitterness can carry a hint of sweetness from the earth." Elena's breath caught. She hadn't known. Last night's whim in making his espresso special suddenly took on immense significance. "My mother loved lavender too," she murmured. "She taught me to use it in small doses, even in cooking. That's why I started experimenting with it in coffee." Dante's gaze returned to her, gentler now. When I tasted it, for a moment, I thought I was dreaming. It was like stepping into a memory of simpler times. Safe times. He paused. After my mother died, I never tasted coffee made that way again. I forgot how much I missed it. How much I missed her. A silence fell. Elena felt the weight of his confession, the vulnerability he was entrusting to her. She realized this was the first deeply personal conversation they'd had that wasn't fraught with anger or commands. He was opening a door to his past, and in doing so he seemed more human than ever. Softly, she asked, "Is that why you brought me here? Because of that memory?" Dante's lips curved in a sad half-smile. "It started with that, perhaps. In that moment, you gave me something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't about to let it slip away. But then I saw you, your courage, the way you didn't cower, even when you should have. I was intrigued. More than I've been by anyone in a long time." He leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table. "I won't lie, Elena. I am not used to denying myself what I want, and I wanted to know more about you. Keeping you here was as much a selfish desire as it was a protective measure, plain and simple. One knife between the ribs. That's all it took. Pity. I hear he was well-liked." Elena's vision blurred, a roaring in her ears. No, it was a mugging," she stammered, denial and shock crashing over her. Rowdy shrugged. "Call it what you will. Mugging, extortion. Doesn't matter now. He died because of the little war Dante's father sparked. Because our kind made your neighborhood a battleground." He clucked his tongue. "I wonder what your Dante will say knowing that. Will he apologize on behalf of our whole sordid world? Or just use it to fuel his endless thirst for vengeance?" Elena felt as if she might be sick. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to break in front of this man. Rage and grief welled up in tandem. "You killed him," she rasped. "You killed my father." The coldness in her own voice surprised her. "Niccolo." He must have heard the promise of hate in her voice because he watched her warily for a moment, then turned back around without another word. Elena fell silent, pressing herself into the seat, shaking with suppressed sobs. Her beloved papa had been taken, not by some random act of fate, but by this man for the crime of standing up to thugs and by extension because of the Mafia feud that had engulfed her city, the very feud Dante was part of. Her thoughts swirled in confusion and pain. A part of her wanted to condemn Dante, too. Did his family's involvement indirectly cause the circumstances of her father's death? He was part of that world, even if he wasn't personally involved in that incident. But her heart resisted blaming him. Dante was trying to shield her, not hurt innocent people. It was men like Rowdy, remorseless and power-hungry, who deserved her fury, and fury she had. It simmered beneath her fear, giving her strength. She glared at the back of Rowdy's head, quietly vowing that he wouldn't break her spirit. For her father's memory, and for Dante's sake, she would endure. The truck sped on as dusk approached. "She's been a lovely guest, though a bit lippy. We had a chat about her dear papa." Dante's gut clenched. That damned Rinaldi, of course he would twist the knife however he could. "Rowdy?" Dante growled. "Let her go. Your quarrel is with me. You want territory, money? My life? Fine, just let her walk out." "No!" Elena cried out. "Hush now," Rowdy hissed near her ear, cocking the gun. She winced as metal pressed harder against her temple. Carlo edged closer, his weapon trained on Dante's heart. "Listen to your Don boss. Drop the gun, and maybe he'll spare your little lover." Dante's nostrils flared as he regarded Carlo. "You disappoint me, Carlo. I treated you like a brother," the older traitor sneered, "and I treated you like a son after your father died. But you were always too soft, Dante. While you were crying over Mama's grave, I was doing what it took to keep the family afloat. Niccolo here appreciates my talents, unlike you." "Enough!" Niccolo snapped. "We don't need the soap opera." He shouted toward Dante's hidden men. "All of you, guns on the ground or I splatter her brains on the floor." Tense beat. Dante could sense Luca and the others behind him, hesitating, waiting for his cue. Elena met Dante's gaze and subtly shook her head, silently pleading with him not to give in. Dante lowered his pistol slowly, letting it drop with a clatter. He raised his hands. "Stand down," he ordered his men quietly. Luca cursed under his breath but complied, weapons thudding to the stone floor as the others followed suit. Niccolo's lips curled in satisfaction. "There now. That's better." He began backing toward the altar, dragging Elena with him. Carlo sidled behind Dante and kicked his fallen pistol far away, then relieved Dante of a second handgun at his ankle with a triumphant little laugh. Carlo prodded Dante's back with the barrel. "On your knees, boy." Dante glanced to see two of Rinaldi's men closing in to restrain Luca and the other Moretti guard at gunpoint.